Ahora le damos la bienvenida a nuestro cuarto exponente, representante de la prestigiosa editorial Merriam Webster, Peter Sokolowski. Peter Sokolowski joined Merriam Webster in 1994 as the company's first French language editor and has since written definitions for many of the company's dictionaries. He also contributes blog articles, podcasts, and videos for the online dictionary. And his writing has appeared in Slate, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. He is a frequent guest on national radio and television and was named among Time's 140 best Twitter feeds of 2013. He leads workshops on dictionaries and the English language for the U.S. State Department, serves as pronouncer for Spelling Bees Worldwide, and as a judge for the Scripps National Spelling Bee. He is the co-host of the Word Master and podcast about words by dictionary editors. Peter attended the University of Paris and earned his MA in French literature at the University of Massachusetts. He is also a freelance musician and a music host of New England Public Radio. Thank you, Professor Peter, for being here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, and I wish I were there in person, of course, someday soon, perhaps. And we are going to talk about dictionaries, and we're going to talk about dictionaries in a little bit of detail. And we're going to go through a number of dictionaries good for the students in the middle and secondary level. And we start with this slide because this is where it starts, I think, for many students, maybe for many teachers, certainly for me, and also historically for dictionaries of English, which is to say bilingual dictionaries. There were bilingual dictionaries in England for many, many years before there was ever a dictionary, a monolingual dictionary as we understand it today. And in fact, it wasn't until about 1600 that there was a dictionary written for that was just a monolingual dictionary. Before that, everything was bilingual, often Latin and English, French and English, Italian and English, Spanish and English. And that is where we often start as language learners. And I love bilingual dictionaries. I helped to write the French bilingual dictionary. And we're very proud of our Spanish bilingual dictionary. And I know that students should and often can move on to monolingual dictionaries, and we're going to look at where they should go in their development. But we're going to start here because this is a familiar place. And many teachers know that bilingual dictionaries help at the beginning and also are consulted throughout our lives. And what's interesting about our bilingual dictionary, our Spanish dictionary now in its second edition, is that it was entirely based on corpus research of New World Spanish, Spanish of Latin America. And that's very different from most other dictionaries by major publishers, which are essentially European based. And often what you find is not only more British English, but you also find very much an orientation toward European Spanish. So that's something we're proud of about Merriam Webster, because we are a New World English dictionary. We made a New World Spanish bilingual dictionary. So if we can go to the next slide, we can look at some of the pages. They look like this. This is hard to see for you, but I want to show you some examples. So go to the next slide and we'll see, I think we can read, some examples that we can read. Well, there are some of these examples from the previous slide, and I don't have them right with me. I will have them tomorrow to show you, that have the labels of different regions. And so some of them are labeled Venezuela, some of them are labeled Colombia. You see some here on this page. If you look down to almost to the end of the left-hand margin, you see a Mexican label. So that we do, even though this is a small paperback that is affordable, that can be used in schools, that can be used at home, you can carry it with you when you travel. It does give you that usage orientation of what we call regional orientation. So that you have that idea of, this is a word used in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, in Venezuela, in Argentina, in Mexico. So this is a dictionary that is small, but it is very well edited. It's very recently edited. It's very fresh, and it's also in its research based on the Latin American Spanish, and that really does make a big difference in the long run. So with our next slide, we'll go very briefly to a much smaller dictionary. This was made for the American market, but there may be a use for this for you as teachers and for your students as well. This is a small dictionary that was made for testing. That is to say, sometimes in testing situations, the students are allowed their dictionary, but in the United States, it was requested to have dictionaries that have the words translation and only the words translation. In other words, no extra information, none of the grammatical information or the collocations or the phrasal verbs or the idioms, all of the good stuff that we're going to get to in just a minute. Sometimes for some teachers, they want just simply the translations. And that's what this dictionary is for. It's a very affordable, inexpensive dictionary. It's a very new dictionary. Take a look at it sometimes. It may serve an important role for a certain kind of student or a certain kind of situation for many teachers. And so again, it was made for that testing situation, a very unusual dictionary in that way, because unlike the bigger one, where we tried to put as much information as possible, this one has a very strictly limited amount of translation information. So to the next slide. And so it looks like this. It looks very, very straightforward. You see that there are translations, but you do not see example sentences. You do not see idioms and collocations and grammar. And again, we will get to all of that, and we have dedicated large books and websites to that information. But sometimes there's an appropriate place to have a straightforward and a limited vocabulary dictionary, and that's what this is for. So to our next slide. So what's also kind of fun and for certain ages may be really important is to add that visual element to a dictionary. And so we make this dictionary, it's a beautiful dictionary. It's a fairly large one. It's large in trim size. We can go to the next page to look inside, and you see the images. They're these beautiful images that correspond to entries on those pages. So you see, in the case of dictionary illustrations, some of the best illustrations are plants, fruit, and animals, because those are things that don't age and become dated looking, and they are fascinating to look at and also have multiple parts. So we see with the spider, the different parts of the spider, including the web, the words for those terms. And then for the different kinds of fruit, the different kinds of what we call stone fruit. So you have nectarines and peaches and cherries. And so you're able to compare them. And what I love about this is also compare their relative sizes. So this is an attractive book. It's a colorful book. It's a fun book to hold. It's in a kind of a sturdy, soft binding. And so this is a great book for young students who enjoy having that visual element in their dictionary. And of course, we all know this, that if you have an image that is compelling like this, it often helps your memory. It helps trigger your memory and your understanding of these terms. And so that's why these terms, and you can see, by the way, the headwords are highlighted on the page that correspond to the illustrations. So this is a book that we love. And again, it's got recent research. It's Latin American Spanish. And again, illustrated for maybe a younger student, although I have to say I love these books, so that it's not exclusively for younger students. So to our next slide. Now, as we go into the school years, there are a few dictionaries that we make that are appropriate for school-age students, and it's important for me to mention, though, that these are dictionaries that we have to understand. These are different from dictionaries written for learners. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but these dictionaries were written for young students Many of the students who use these dictionaries grew up speaking English in the home. So there is a limited vocabulary. These are plain language definitions. They're very clear with lots of good illustrations, engravings, and example sentences. However, these are not written for learners of English. So they can be very helpful for ambitious and advanced students at a young age. Let's take a look at one of these pages with the next slide. So you can see they have the wonderful, those classic illustrations. 70,000 entries is a good sized dictionary. This is a good dictionary for a middle school student, a student who is 13 or 14 or 15 years old. A lot of examples of usage. And 1,000 little drawings or illustrations, and occasionally those word history paragraphs and synonyms for extra information about these words. The definitions are fairly straightforward and fairly easy to read. Can we, on the next slide, I think we have an example. I forget, I did so many slides that I don't remember. Okay, no, this goes to the next one. That's okay. So now, if your students are prepared for this dictionary and they move on into high school, the next slide will show us the next dictionary chronologically that was made for high school students. And again, go to the next slide. We'll take a look at 100,000 entries, a very 100,000 definitions, a very comprehensive dictionary. And we have the word history that we can read here. So that gets into some of the great fun etymology that we like if we're language lovers. Again, but this is information that is often more detailed and more in depth than would be wanted for a learner, a learner who is unfamiliar with a lot of the words used in the definitions of this dictionary, which is why we also make dictionaries for learners. But this is made originally for high school students. And if you have ambitious readers, successful students, students who are going to study abroad in an English-speaking country, or who are taking English courses in the various subject areas, that could be literature, could be science, could be history. This is an excellent dictionary for those kinds of students of sort of special subjects. So to the next slide. And this is the elementary dictionary. I put them in the wrong order, I'm sorry, but this was made for younger students. But let's go to the next slide and we'll take a look at what this looks like. This is for younger students. You'll see it's more colorful and it has photographs as well as illustrations. And I put them chronologically in the wrong order, but I think you understand there are 3 in this sequence that will lead to the college level dictionary. And this is really the one for the younger students or for the classroom, a hardcover dictionary that could be used for teachers or students. This is the dictionary that is originally written for those younger students who are 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 years of age and who are studying English. But often, again, keep in mind, these definitions were written for children who grew up hearing and speaking English at home. So wait for the Learner's Dictionary, because we're getting to the ESL Dictionary in just a moment. So to the next slide. So yes, and these little paragraphs, these are great for teachers because first of all, you have a little section on the sounds of every single letter of the alphabet. This is fascinating. And of course, English is difficult to spell. We all know that. It's unlike Spanish, which is much more phonetically regular. And so when, in this case, for example, with S, you do have the idea of a voiced S sound, like a Z sound, and the double S sound that we encounter. So you, in this little box, it says the sounds of S, the letter S most commonly makes the sound heard in sand first and streets. In some words, especially at the ends of words, S sounds like a Z, as in easy words and dries. Those are important sounds to practice and to learn. And of course, those are different sounds for many speakers of Spanish. And so that's an important lesson to learn, that phonetic lesson. And now, of course, this letter combines with H. So it makes the sound we hear in share, S alone or with a second S, is also makes this sound like sugar or pressure. And again, these are important phonetic lessons to learn for any learner of English. And another sound is the one heard in words like measure and confusion. And we usually indicate this with a ZH as a transcription. And then, of course, it's also a silent letter, as in the words island. And so S is a complicated letter with a lot of different sounds. And so a lesson could be made, or a group of lessons, on just the sound of this letter. And then, of course, there are the rest of the alphabet to go through. Also, this dictionary has these little word history paragraphs, in this case, soccer, to explain this word and how it's used and its history. So there's lots of good little storytelling about words, about letters in this dictionary. It's one of our favorite and best-selling dictionaries. So to the next slide. Also, so there are quizzes here. The synonym paragraphs are great. Again, it makes a lesson all by itself. So with the word seek, for example, we have seek and we have search and we have hunt. And those are all words that a student can learn in the first 2 years. And yet, how do you distinguish them? It's great to have a little paragraph that makes these semantic distinctions like this. These 3 words mean to look for something. Seek may be used in looking for either material or mental things. She's seeking new friends, or I seek the truth. Search is used when looking for something in a very careful or thorough way. We searched all over the house. And then hunt is used for a long pursuit. I hunted all day. And so, or I was hunting birds. And so this is a fascinating look into the way that words are used. Usage is what we call this in the dictionary business. And so we have for these synonyms little paragraphs. And then, of course, head scratchers. These are just kind of indications of the way that English, it can be confusing and also amusing. We have head scratcher. You can slow up and you can also slow down. These phrasal verbs that are so bewildering in English because they can seem like opposites when sometimes they mean the same thing, as in this case. And in this case, of course, also we have the word short. So what word becomes shorter when you add 2 letters to it? Short. So it's a little quiz, a little joke using the words. And again, these are resources that a teacher can use. If you have this on your desk, you can make a small lesson based on just the sounds of a letter, the sounds of different words, the words' histories, and their synonyms. So the dictionary can be a textbook for language, which is what I always say. So we can go to the next slide. Now we get to a dictionary that was created specifically for learners of English. Now, many of you are familiar with this kind of dictionary. I'm very proud that I was on the staff of this particular dictionary, so I wrote many of these definitions, and I'm very proud of this book, and I love it. It's the first dictionary made entirely in the United States and made for learners of English, for learners who did not grow up speaking English at home. To give that extra help to, first of all, there are 3 important differences between this dictionary and a comprehensive dictionary that is monolingual, that is not written in this way. The 3 big differences are the definitions are written in plain English, in a simple vocabulary of about 3,000 words, so that a student in the end of the first year, the beginning of the second year, can read and understand the definitions of 100,000 words. So that is the most important difference. The second difference is that this dictionary has an enormous number of example sentences, because you need the context, you need the syntax, you need the register, you need to see how a word is used. Now, I know as a fluent speaker of another language, of French, that when I'm looking up a word in a French dictionary, it's often not for the translation, not for the meaning, but for the preposition. It's for the collocation. It's for the word that comes after, right? And we all know that this is true. And that's what this dictionary does better than any other dictionary ever made in the United States. And the third difference is that this dictionary has a comprehensive accounting of idioms in the English language. So let's take a look at the next slide and we can see what some of these examples are. So here's what a page spread looks like. The blue or green represent the example sentences, and the black are the definitions. So it's very easy to see that the blue sentences are the examples, and the black sentences are the definitions, which makes this dictionary easy to use and easy to read. There are many, many examples and of idioms. I think on the next slide, let's take a look. And we can see, for example, these great illustrations of the different kinds of cats on the left and different kinds of percussion instruments on the right. And so you have the advantage of those illustrations in addition to all of the lexical and semantic and idiomatic information in this dictionary. So yeah, take a look at the next slide. We can see how that looks. Okay, now we made a smaller version of this dictionary, one that is easier to carry. Many people asked us, in fact, I think initially it was the United States government that wanted a smaller dictionary for learners. So this is an abridgment of the bigger one. We can go to the next slide and take a look at what it looks like. It has all of the same information. It's presented in smaller pages, so it's a little bit harder to read. In this case, the example sentences are presented in italics. So you can see the italics in there, and those pages are very crammed. They're full of information, but that's part of having as much information as possible in a small paperback dictionary. So this, in many ways, is the best value because it's less expensive, but it has much of the same information. So you can go to the next page, next slide. Now, for fun, a lot of teachers love this dictionary. This is a fun dictionary. If you know Garfield, a very famous comic strip in the United States, this is a dictionary that is that has, in addition to the definitions, it also has comic strips that illustrate a certain word on a given page. So if we look at the next slide, we'll see a couple examples, I think. Yeah, so we can make this bigger, and we can see that we have lasagna, I think, is on the right. And we have a couple of comics on the left. So you can see on every page where the comic uses a given word, that word's definition is on that page. So it's a fun dictionary. It's a very big seller in the United States, and people love this. It's also great if you're a teacher. Now you have access to all of these cartoons that show you idiomatic usage of a given word, a little fun cartoon, but also cartoons show something that's very important, which is informal, conversational American English. So that these, these are very famous cartoons culturally. Garfield is very famous, but also the language in the cartoon. It's a very word-based linguistic jokes in these cartoons, and so you as a teacher could use these again for lessons or for small investigations of words. So go to the next slide. Now, if you want to dig a little deeper, we have the vocabulary builder. This is a great way to study. This is the way that in the United States, a lot of the students study for the spelling bee, for the big spelling competitions. So go to the next page and we'll show you how this works. These are lessons that are already made. So in this case, the lesson is the root vor, V-O-R, which means to eat. And it's the root of words like carnivorous or herbivorous. So that if you learn the root and where it comes from Greek or Latin, and of course the Latin roots will all resonate with your Spanish speakers, they will all be the same, but then it provides 4 or 5 English words that derive directly from those roots. And so can we go to the next page and see? So then there are also quizzes based upon those lessons so that you as a teacher can simply use the quizzes from this book. By the way, so you know, the answers are all in the back of the book. So that you can use this book for yourself in class, for your students at home, or for yourselves to improve your vocabulary. This is one of the best-selling paperback books that we publish, and it's principally purchased, I believe, by adults in the United States who simply want to improve their vocabulary. And so it's a fun book for self-study. It's also a great book for directed study by teachers. So go to the next slide. We'll see what we have here. Yeah, so this is a better view. So we can see hyder from the Greek, meaning water, and hydraulic is a common word in English. We give you the definition, and then we give you an example sentence and how it's used, and then, of course, quizzes after it. So this is a great sort of self-guided tour through etymology. But etymology sometimes sounds like it's too serious or deep or difficult. This is an easy way to approach the study of the roots of words and to realize that words, of course, grow from each other. And so your vocabulary grows from the knowledge of these roots. You learn one root, in this case, you learn 5 words of English. But of course, those can grow and grow. And so can we go to the next slide? We'll see. I don't know how many, I forgot how many slides there were. And again, here's more of those words: dehydrate, hydroelectric, hydroponic, more of the words. So just to make that point, that studying with this book is easy and self-directed, but for a teacher, it can provide lessons for you. So on to the next slide. And here's more of the quizzes. Yeah, on to the next slide. I did more slides. Now, for just to kind of wrap up and to show that you know, dictionary publishing has been a very long journey. As I said, the first English language dictionaries in London are almost 400 years, or a little bit more than 400 years ago. And now, of course, our dictionaries are online. There's a great dictionary at merriam-webster.com, which is one of the best visited websites in the United States. But there's also this dictionary, which you can find at Britannica Dictionary or learnersdictionary.com. And this is an online version of our Advanced Learners English Dictionary. The definitions and the examples and the idioms are all there. This has something else, though. It has the audio. You can click on a word and hear the words pronounced. And so you can hear that audio and use that audio in a classroom situation. You can use this dictionary on your phone or anywhere you are. It's free to be used. It has little ads, as you see on the side. So this is a dictionary that you can use to augment your study, to study at home, to recommend to your students. And again, it has the same definitions as in our big Advanced Learners Dictionary. And all of those example sentences and all of those idioms, they're all presented here. You can go to the next slide and we can see, I think, another image of the, oh yes, it also provides the word of the day, which you can subscribe to. You can get word of the day through Merriam-Webster via email. You can get it as a podcast. And as a podcast, many teachers in the United States use it to listen to, again, you're listening to the voice speak the definition and the examples. The voice in our podcast for word of the day happens to be my voice. I record it right here. And I've been recording the word of the day since 2006. So I think it's about 6,000 days in a row. And many teachers use it in classrooms. They'll play, it's just a 2-minute podcast every single day. Here's the word, here's its definition, here's what it means. Now, again, that word of the day podcast through Merriam-Webster was not designed for English language learners, but it's for everybody, and it could be great in your classroom as well, especially for advanced students. But again, part of it is to connect the sound of the words with a rhythm and a cadence of a native speaker. And of course, you learn a new definition and a new word every day, which is great fun. So I think you go to the next slide, or that may be our final slide. And if that's our last slide, then I'm happy to hear questions. A reminder that tomorrow I'll be speaking about more advanced dictionaries for learners. And I'm going to be giving a special talk at the end of this conference about idioms, particularly American English idioms, how to teach them, how to learn them, how to encounter them, where to find them. And I consider idioms to be one of the most important linguistic lessons that we can give to students, mostly because idioms are culturally based, they're culturally specific, and they're very often, of course, not based on the strict meanings of the words themselves. So for an example, I could say, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. It's a very common idiom in American English, and yet it doesn't mean I'm hungry for the meat of a horse. And so there are many others that you know and that you teach. For example, a piece of cake means something is very easy. It doesn't mean it's dessert. And so we want to talk about that kind of use of language, which is such an important part of not only informing your students, but also, I think, treating them as intelligent and developing learners, that they can recognize that language can be metaphor, that language can be symbol, that language can be story, and not just translation. And I think that takes a student, even in the first year, to the next level. In their own mind, they recognize, aha, I learned the word cake. I know what that word means as a translation, but then I learned the idiom piece of cake. So I've learned a big piece of American idiomatic English with that lesson. And so that's what our keynote will be tomorrow evening. So I hope you can join me for that as well. Are there any questions?
Hi, hello, Mr. Peter. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, there were some questions. There's one that someone asked if what would you recommend? Should every student have their own dictionary, or do you think that's better to have like a pile of dictionaries in the classroom, or should they have their own to take back and forward to their homes? What do you think? What's your opinion on?
Yeah, it depends on the age of the student and their development, of course. If it's a serious student who is in the second or third year already, then I would always say the advanced learners dictionary should be at home with them. The reason that dictionary was written was so that the student can get the answer when you, the teacher, are not with them. In other words, you're teaching them how to use a dictionary by example in the classroom, but then when they are home doing their homework, they should be able to do that mechanical thing of opening up a book, finding the answer by themselves, reading that definition and understanding it on their own. That dictionary was written for that exact purpose, so that if you are in a classroom where you can afford that dictionary for every student, they should have it at their home. And then one copy in the classroom, of course, for consulting. Or if they're doing projects with groups, they can share a copy. And so again, maybe for a very young student, they might have a smaller dictionary for their own and the bigger one in the classroom. But once if they're a serious student and they're into the second year, they should have that advanced learners, at home for homework, so they can do it on their own and very importantly, have the satisfaction of the process of learning without you there, because they do it with you in person in class, but then they have to replicate, they have to reproduce that same intellectual action by themselves, at least a little bit on their own. And maybe they'll be curious when they're watching YouTube or watching a movie or reading a book, and then they'll go to their dictionary. And that's why it should be close at hand and should be at home.
Thank you. Well, I personally love dictionaries. I don't know, but I love them. They're so special. Thank you very much. So I'm looking forward to see you tomorrow. That's amazing what you're telling us. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. You're welcome. Muchísimas gracias al señor Peter, de verdad, increíble. Si se dedican a la enseñanza de idiomas, ¿no están seguros qué material didáctico se adapta mejor a tus necesidades? Oserco brinda asesoría personalizada y de calidad para colegas y profesores con la finalidad de satisfacer las necesidades tanto de alumnos como personal docente. Recuerden que tenemos un concurso especial para ustedes. Es muy sencillo participar. Solo deben acompañarnos durante la feria virtual vía Zoom y seguir a Oserco en su cuenta de Instagram @OsercoBooks. Solo eso y ya estarás participando.